What's up, guys? It is your boy Samoan Fan 101, and today is once again one of my movie reviews. This time I'm going to be reviewing Spider-Man Far From Home. No spoilers, of course, as the film just came out earlier this week, so I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Now, before I get into the review, I just want to say real quick, I've been going back and I've been re-reviewing not re-reviewing, I've been reviewing all the wrestling shows that I missed from WWE. I plan on doing ones for AEW, and I just took a few days break, so I guess I was just jumping show after show after show, and I'm like, okay, I need a break. So very soon, probably in the next couple days, you're going to see the review for TakeOver 25. After that, I'm going to get into the AEW shows, and after I'm done reviewing those shows, I'll get into the TNA shows and just trying to catch up with the other companies that I said I would watch. One of the things I will do, though, during that time, is I'm going to be reviewing the G1 Climax shows, much like I did with the G1 Climax, G1 27, and when I eventually get to a G1 28, I will be reviewing each and every day of those shows. Only the tournament matches only. I'm not going to be watching or reviewing the matches that come before that, because let's face it, those are just warm-up matches. So that's going to be kind of the plan. With that being said, let's get into this movie review here. Spider-Man Far From Home. I saw this film this past Wednesday, just a few days ago. I'm recording this on a Saturday, which is July 6th, and I watched this on July 3rd, and I wanted to get a few days in order to kind of collect myself and to figure out my thoughts, because what tends to happen to me is I always find myself being excited and loving it in the moment, but then when I go back and think about it, what worked, what didn't, that kind of thing. So, what's the plot that I can give away? Because, like I said, I don't want any spoilers here, or like any major spoilers, I should say. I guess you could say I can give minor ones away. Got my water bottle right here, just in case my throat gives out. So, what's going on? Well, the film opens up in a destroyed city in Mexico. Nick Fury and Maria Hill go to investigate it, and apparently they hear rumors that it's being attacked by a sandstorm with a face. Hang on a second. And then comes the arrival of Mysterio. Now, looking at the trailers, we all knew Mysterio was going to be in this movie. In this movie, his name is Quentin Beck. So, and by the way, I will have negatives to point on later, like I usually do in my reviews, so don't worry. He arrives to fight the creature, and what happens is, that's basically what happens. 8 months later, in New York City, this is sometime after the blip, as they call it. In case you're wondering what the blip is what is being coined as Thanos' snap, because of course there are many people, even though they probably have heard about the death of Thanos and certain things that go on, they don't know exactly what it was, so they call it the blip. That's when Thanos snapped away half of the entire universe. And the blip is like the 5-year gap. And it also represents the fact that when everyone came back, and it actually did it in a very clever way, because in the beginning of the movie, we see images that it looks like something that, a high school would pull up. Images that some of them are kind of grainy. They're kind of supposed to be in to tribute the dead Avengers. They tribute Tony Stark. They tribute Vision, who died in Infinity War, and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, who much like Tony Stark, died in Avengers Endgame. They also did one for Captain America, although as we saw in Endgame, Captain America, at least by the end of that film, is indeed still alive, but of course everyone thinks he's dead because, he wanted to live a life for the love of God. And I actually really enjoyed that. The fact that they did because what they did was like, okay, why do they use high school things? Because, doesn't that look amateurish? Well, the fact is, this was part of the high school news, and believe me, I went to 2 different schools. that had this high school news amateur thing. So believe me, if it looks amateurish, that's only because it is amateurish. It does feel like an amateur did it because these are high schoolers. So you get that. Now, what they did was actually very clever. When they brought back everyone in the blip, what they did was they transported everyone that was would disappear, that turned into ash during the blip, into the same spot. Now, of course, this begs the question: well, what about people in cars or in the middle of a boat or whatever? Do they get, done in the middle of the sea? But those are semantics. This is a comic book film. Let's just roll with it. So basically, Peter Parker, who he's still, even though he's happy and now things are slowly getting back to normal, he's still reeling a little bit from the death of Tony Stark from the last movie. So basically what's happening is the film is trying to point in the direction that, maybe he'll be the next Tony Stark or the next Iron Man, because he shows up in his Iron Spider suit at a fundraiser event. He shows up with Aunt May, who of course by this point knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but they don't know. But of course the audience does not know that. And Peter's very awkward about it. He speaks with soon after that he speaks with Happy, and some of this we see in the trailer, so don't worry. He speaks with Happy. He's being contacted by Nick Fury, but Peter doesn't want to come. He doesn't want to talk to Nick Fury. And this is probably about the big monster stuff. But he doesn't want to do it because he wants to be a teenager. He's gonna go to Europe, which of course is the main plot. One of the big plot points of the movie is that he goes on a school trip to Europe. And by the way, after what we saw in the last Homecoming, after the death of Tony, I actually do really like the dynamic between Peter Parker and Happy Hogan. It kind of reminds me of Tony and Happy when they were doing their shtick in the other movies. So there's that. We have several things going on after questions, or after the crowd starts questioning about him being, the next leader of the Avengers, and some Iron Man related questions. He takes off because he can't handle it. And again, you see this in the trailer. He sits on a roof, and he sees a painting of Tony Stark. Now, or should I say, of Iron Man. Now, what I like about this is that in the movie they kind of portray Iron Man as this mythical hero, because he really was the biggest hero of the MCU, even more so than Captain America. He was the biggest. He was the most well known. And along with Cap, he carried the franchise. And now Peter is like haunted because everywhere he goes, he sees several images and various paintings or whatever of Iron Man, and a lot of places that he goes, and it does kind of haunt him. Now, do they delve too much in the hardcore drama aspect of the movie? No. This is a Spider-Man MCU film, so they do keep a lot of the goofiness and a lot of the humor in the film, and that really picks up when they start leaving when they leave for the European trip. Now, part of the plot point is that Peter wants to confess his feelings to MJ, who is not Mary Jane Watson, but is Michelle Jones in this film, played by Zendaya, who actually does a very good job in this movie, I will say. So, as you probably imagine, shit goes wrong. Nick Fury does contact Peter Parker, and he meets up with Quentin Beck, a.k.a. Mysterio. Well, at least, they call him Mysterio in the news and stuff. And they work together to fight what's called the Elementals, which the Elementals are actually a comic book, or should I say a Marvel Comics thing. The Elementals, actually have a name. They actually have a name. Hellfire, or names of the groups. They're a group of villains with various powers. Hellfire, Hydron, Magnum, and Zephyr. Who I'm pretty sure it's Zephyr. Now in the comics, they're a group of people, or humanoids, if you will, who have powers. In this film, they're simply giant roaming creatures with the same elemental powers, but they're different in the sense that, again, they're giant creatures, not people. That's the big difference. So yeah, they bring in the elementals. Supposedly Mysterio is from another dimension, or another Earth. Which, it makes it. Of course, do they bring in the multiverse aspect? Of course, you got to see that in order to figure out. You got to see the movie in order to figure out exactly what's going on. But basically, they basically want Peter Parker to join as Spider-Man with Mysterio to fight the Elementals, which are the attacks are happening throughout Europe. Which is weird because Peter wanted to stay away from Nick Fury, and it ended up that he would be going towards Nick Fury, or where Fury wanted him to be. Now, the difference, not the difference. Now, what makes this bad for Peter, I should say, is that he wants to go on a school trip. He wants to be, and it makes sense. He wants to be a regular teenager. So he says, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And he even asks, what about the other heroes? What are they doing? Thor's off-world. Doctor Strange is unavailable, even though this is the kind of thing that he deals with, magical creatures. And Captain Marvel, Nick Fury says, don't bring her into this shit. It's almost like he's thinking the same thing we are. No, less Captain Marvel is what we need. But still, Peter thinks he's done, but then, of course, Nick Fury sends him throughout Europe, and Peter teams up with Mysterio. He also has to, he wants to confess to MJ's feelings. Ned, of course, is in on it, so he tries to cover for whenever Peter's not with the group. So there's that. And on a little bit of a side plot, there's a growing romance, or supposedly a growing romance, between Happy Hogan and Aunt May, or May Parker. So, a bunch of shit goes wrong. What goes on in this movie? So, I'm not going to spoil too much after that. What do I think of this movie? Well, got the main plot out of the way. What do I think of it? Because I could go on forever with the actual plot, and that's all I'm willing to give away. Well, there is one other thing I should say. Peter Parker is given these things called, these pair of glasses called Edith, which is an artificial intelligence, much in the same way that Jarvis was and that Friday was for Tony Stark. And it was given to him kind of as like a last present for Tony Stark. Because it was sent to him in a box and it was signed TS, which of course means Tony Stark. Tony, in fact, signed it. So he also has the extra responsibility of having the Edith glasses, which have an incredible amount of power, so many drones. Now, Peter, at one time, accidentally uses it for a different purpose, and he doesn't want to use it for that purpose, but of course shenanigans happens. But okay, aside from that, now that that's being said, and by the way, the Edith glasses do play a part in this movie. I'll say that much and that much alone. So what do I think of the movie? I think it's a very good movie. I personally think it's better than Homecoming. And Homecoming had its flaws, but I actually really enjoyed Homecoming. I know not everyone does, but I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed this movie as well. Now, what do I think about... Now, what works? What works? Well, a lot of the actors do a great job as their characters. Once again, Tom Holland is fantastic as Spider-Man. I've said this before to friends, and I don't know if I said this in Spider-Man Homecoming, but I'll say it here, or in Captain America Civil War, whatever. Tom Holland has proven to me to be the best Spider-Man. Sam Raimi Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire, in my opinion, was the best Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield was the better Spider-Man. Tom Holland is the best of both. He's the best of both. He's the best Spider-Man and the best Peter Parker. He's just that good. Tom Holland, he is great in this role. He's just fantastic. His delivery is awesome. The timing and everything, it's all great. Samuel Jackson as Nick Fury, he's great in this movie too. Zendaya as MJ. I'll say this much. I like Liz in the first movie, but my main My main complaint with her in the first movie was that she was kind of just there to be the hot chick that Peter likes. And at first you might think, well, what about MJ? She might be that too. The difference is that MJ she's a smarter character than Liz is. She's an overall more developed character than Liz. She's got those quirky little things that make her a more memorable character. And on top of that, she actually helps, move the plot along. The plot along. She helps move the plot along. And she actually, goes out of her way to try to figure things out. And as seen in the trailer, I won't spoil it here, but as seen in the trailer, she figures out more than even Peter Parker knows that she might have figured it out already, which I think is great. And she's not a dumbass character like some other people in other movies, not in this film. The guy who plays Ned, what's his name? Ned Leeds, Jacob Batalon or Battalion. I'm gonna say Batalon as Ned, who clearly is a takeoff of Ned Leeds from the comics. He's Parker's best friend. He's funny in this movie. He was great in the last movie. And what did they do? They gave us more of what we wanted. They gave us more Ned, and Ned is awesome. Jon Favreau as Happy. He's great in this film. He was always great as Happy in the other films, but he's also great here. And again, like I said earlier, the dynamic between him and Peter, I wouldn't say Happy is not the father figure to Peter. That was more Tony. Happy, I guess you could say, is more of the uncle figure, or even like a big brother figure. Which is where actually he's an uncle figure, because there should be an Uncle Ben. But he's kind of like that role. Or like the father's best friend kind of thing. That's kind of what Happy is. And he's trying to, help out Peter with his thing. He's not in the movie as much as you might think. He's in it. He's in it in the beginning. He's in it a lot for the climax. But with the exception of one scene, there's a good middle portion of the movie where he's not in it. But I actually like that because Peter's in Europe, so you would expect that. Well, what are some other people I like? Marisa Tomei as May Parker. I think she's great. Now, I've heard some, criticism online. Is like, why is May Parker hot? She's supposed to be the old lady kind of thing. I've heard Jeremy from Geeks Gamers bring it up, and I understand. But personally, and this goes to the nature of the MCU Spider-Man, they're trying to do things differently. That either hasn't been done in the other movies, or it has, but they're trying to do it in a different way, and trying to make it mean something a bit differently. For example, the whole dynamic between Peter Parker and Uncle Ben. We already saw the Uncle Ben origin, or not Uncle Ben's origin, but we saw the whole thing with Peter and Uncle Ben in 2 different sets of Spider-Man films. So I understand why they didn't want to bring Uncle Ben into this movie, or this franchise, I should say, and why they made Tony Stark the figure. After all, they introduced the character in Civil War, not in his own film, so they had to do something. I did like that. I like the fact that and I like the fact that Aunt May is a different Aunt May. Now, granted, Sally Fields, who played Aunt May in the Amazing Spider-Man films, she was a good stupid bug. Sorry about that. She was a hot little thing back in the day, but she obviously showed her age in the Amazing Spider-Man films. In this film, though, even though Marisa Tomei is not exactly in her 20s or 30s, she's still very good looking. She's a hot Aunt May, and I don't mind that at all. And I like the fact that they attract attention to that in the Homecoming. And in this film, not as much, but they still do it. And there is a thing there, obviously, between Happy and Aunt May. Kobe Smulders, Maria Hill, she's good in this. We got several other, people in this movie, like Tony Revolori as Flash Thompson. And again, not the white blonde jacked up jock that he was in the comics. He's just a rich kid. He's a rich asshole. And even Angourie Rice. And I mentioned her in Homecoming, how she played Betty Brant in that brief scene in Homecoming. Here she's in a bigger role because she actually starts up a relationship throughout the European trip with Ned, which is, and they call each other sweetie, they text each other and everything. It's actually kind of funny. So I actually do like, you know, certain things in this movie. And all the characters that are done, I do like that. All except for one character, and I'll get to him in a bit. Jake Gyllenhaal. I gotta say this. Okay, so Jake Gyllenhaal, great villain. I think he's slightly better than Mysterio. Keep in mind, I say slightly. It's close because I thought Michael Keaton was a great Vulture, and if it wasn't for the mid-credit scene, and I won't spoil what happens in the mid-credit scene, but if it wasn't for the mid-credit scene, I would give the slight edge to Vulture because I just loved Michael Keaton's portrayal of that character so much. I liked how Vulture was a more of a three-dimensional character. You understood why he was doing what he was doing. Not that he was a bad guy, but as Peter kept on pursuing him, he was pushed to do more and more bad things. So I understand, I totally get, wanting, you know, thinking, I even get if some people still think that Vulture's a better villain. I understand that. And for a while, I'm like, okay, a great villain. And, of course, you knew Mysterio was going to be the bad guy. It's not too much of a spoiler. I mean, Mysterio's always a bad guy. It's just, is he going to be the illusionist that he was in the comics, or are they going to stick with the multiverse thing that they introduced in the trailers in the movie? I won't spoil exactly which one it is, but he's still a great villain. The twist of it is great. Everything about the character is great. Because, you know, the way he acts... I'll say this. The way he acts in the first half of the movie when he's just being good guy Mysterio, and the way he acts in the second half of the movie, there is a difference. And some people might say, oh, well, the acting isn't so good in the first half with him. When you watch the second half of the film, you understand why. There is a purpose. So I really like that little attention to detail of why they did that. You have... yeah, and some people might say, well, watching the film, oh, Nick Fury, and if they skipped on the credit scenes, they wouldn't get it. Nick Fury and Maria Hill, specifically Nick Fury, you know, wasn't he being a bit too hard on Peter? Like, he understands he's a kid, right? And sometimes he wasn't even as hard on the other heroes as he was on Peter Parker, whenever Peter Parker messed up. Now, it's like, great, but, you know, you understand, that, well, it's just a bit too harsh on him, especially for a teenager. Again, when you watch, not the mid-credits, but when you watch the post-credits scene, you understand why. Again, I like that attention to detail. And with certain lines that Fury says in the movie, they just leave a little bit of information like, okay, here's a nugget or a clue that something's up, that something is not 100% right. And they explain it in the post-credits, and I really do like that attention to detail. It's the kind of thing the MCU does great. Not all the time, but great. So, yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal, back to Jake Gyllenhaal, though. And I just like the kind of character shift that he has in the second half of the film. I also like the dynamic between him and Peter Parker. I think they have a great dynamic. When they get to know each other, when they sit around and talk, I do very much enjoy that. And it does make it, for me at least, a little bit more heartbreaking when you find out Mysterio and his true purpose. Why Mysterio is really doing what he's doing. And you could tell it does hurt Peter Parker a little bit. Like, please, why are you doing this? So then you have, so yeah, you have that. You have the relationship between Peter and MJ, which I think is very well done. I like how they do it. I like how they do certain things. It's just really, really cool how they do. The relationships they handle in this movie are very good. Nearly all the relationships are great. Or good to great, I should say. So, you have all that. So, and you have other things too. Like, in the film, I won't spoil exactly which ones, but in the film, when explaining why Mysterio is doing what he's doing, there's two callbacks to previous MCU films. And I love that attention to detail, especially with the second film, with the second character, not the second character, but with the second film that was shown. I love that attention to detail, how they were able to get it. Just absolutely great. Okay, action scenes are great. The special effects are great. The cinematography is also very good. A lot of great things. What are some criticisms that I have? That's what you really want to hear. What are some criticisms? Well, I do have a few. My first criticism, and it's really one of the easier ones. I'm getting some of the easy ones out of the way first. The first criticism is Peter's sudden attraction to MJ. Now, granted, 8 months have gone by between, or at least 8 months to a year has gone by between Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, before I continue, I forgot to mention this earlier. When they explaining the blip thing, because I'm talking about the beginning of the movie, it reminds me, explaining the blip thing, you still have some people who were kids 5 years prior during the events of Infinity War. But when the blip happened, 5 years went by, they were living their lives. Some jokes are made about what happened during the blip, like characters who grew up, or other characters, something happened to their personal lives. I do like that. I thought that was pretty cool and kind of funny. But okay, back to the negatives. Beginning of the movie, all of a sudden Peter has a sudden attraction to MJ, which is weird, because in the last film he had a sudden attraction to Liz. Now all of a sudden he's attracted to MJ. I do think there should have been, because MJ could be kind of a dick in the last movie, I do think that MJ and Peter should have spent a little bit more time together before, Peter thinks, okay, this is the girl I like, this is the one I want to confess my feelings to. That's what I want. That's what I like. That's what I like. I wish they would have had more time to develop the actual relationship. I noticed that. And I'm like, that does seem a bit odd. That just seems a bit out of order. Another thing about this film is the fact that I'm trying to. I had like a list of 4 or 5 things I had. So it's weird going through this thing. You might forget something. I hate it when I was hoping it wouldn't do that. Now I do. So another thing that this film does that I have to admit is a problem, and not a problem in the sense that I hate it, but there is a big drastic quality shift between the first half of the movie and the second half of the movie. I like the first half of the movie. Now, some people might say, oh, the first half is rough, it's not that great. And while I do think the second half is better, I do like the first half of the movie. But that still stands how I noticed it. There is a good difference between the first half of the movie and the second half of the movie. I do think that is a little bit jarring, and it does take a moment to get used to. And it's like, okay, that is kind of a flaw. The fact that you notice there's a shift. Another bug. Another thing I didn't like about this movie was, I remember what I said earlier that I liked nearly all the characters. I said nearly being the operative word. There is a teacher. Now, we see the teacher from the last film, which I still like in this movie, and I really enjoy him. But there's a second teacher called Julius Dell, played by J.B. Smoove. And I'm actually going to look at who the hell is J.B. Smoove. J.B. Smoove is a good actor, writer. He's a comedian, a voice actor. So he's been around for a while, because he was born in 1965. He's in his early 50s, early to mid 50s. He does not do anything for me. I think he has like one decent line when something's going on. The teacher's looking at Smoove, and still a bug in here. And Smoove is like, "Don't look at me, man. I ain't covering up for your crap." And I'm like, or said something to that effect. I'm like, okay, that was kind of funny. Aside from that, I did not really enjoy J.B. Smoove at all in this movie. He just did not come across as necessary. And I said this to my friend as I was watching the movie. This character is not necessary. We already have a teacher character. Why do we need another one? I never got it. I mean, and I'm not saying he's a bad person or that he was horrible, but he was completely unnecessary. and that's just how I felt. I didn't like that. So there was that. You had it's weird because I'm trying to think of things, and I was just thinking about it a minute ago. It was weird. I'm trying to think of things that. Oh, now I remembered. The other thing that is a little bit jarring in this film, or not jarring, but it's a little bit weird. Peter Parker, now he's been a hero going back to Captain America Civil War. 3 months of Spider-Man at that point is how long he's been doing this. Well, at that point. Now, of course, a few years go by. He has got a few years more experience, you know, minus the time that the blip happened, because he was gone for 5 years. So, and I understand. He's a teenager. And I do give the film a little bit of slack in the sense that, okay, he's a teenager. He obviously wants to prioritize him being a teen over being a hero. However, there are a couple moments when he's talking to Fury about what he wants and what he doesn't want. And it's like, okay, I understand he's a teen, but you are Spider-Man, and you did commit yourself to this. I did wish sometimes that he would buckle down a little bit more as a hero and not too much as a teen. And I love teenage Peter Parker. I love him in this movie. But I'm talking specifically when he's talking with Nick Fury and those characters, and he wants to be more of a teenager and just to do his own thing. I understand that, and I actually do like it. So, yeah, I do like it. Hang on, I think I got him, and I do like that. But I do think that there was a little bit too much of it, and I'm like, alright, I gotta admit, like, a little bit too much of the teenage angst is what I think I'm trying to say. Too much teenage angst. Just a little bit. Not too much, but it's a little bit. And it's like, from a character who's supposed to be Spider-Man, one of the most heroic characters in the MCU and the comics as well, you know, he's trying to dodge his responsibility a little bit too much, especially since the last film. He wanted to take on as much responsibility as possible. Now, it's like he doesn't want all the responsibility. It's like, yeah, it's kind of unbalanced there. So there's that little thing. So you do have that, and it is a minus on the film. So, you know, leaving that at that, I don't want to, you know, ramble on too much. There are, now, with that being said, what do I think about, you know, other things? You know, I still like it. I still like the film. I think there was one other thing I was about to, you know, rag on. But, you know, yeah, it's not that big. Those are the main four I wanted to bring up. So, with that being said, what do I give this film? What rating do I give this movie? I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I think I think it does still try to play it safe despite going bigger with its, you know, with its budget and its production and how they do handle the action scenes, especially later in the film. But I do very much enjoy this film. I think it's better than Homecoming, even though Homecoming had some very good things in it. I think this film is just a little bit better. I don't know how much better. I'm gonna rank the MCU films from worst to best, and you'll see that video very soon. Actually, probably sometime this week. Now that I've collected my bearings on phases 1 through 3, and I do like how, even though I would have preferred Endgame to be the end of Phase 3, considering how big of a film that was, I do like how when this was a Phase 3 film, they dealt with the not the consequences, but kind of like the backlash or the fallout, I should say, of what happened in that film and how it kind of transported onto Peter Parker. I do like that. So there is that going for it. So with that being said, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. That's my rating. Before I leave this video, I want to give a quick shout out to a guy that's been supporting me for the last several videos. He's been going back and reviewing MCU films as well from time to time. His YouTube name is Anthony A. Perez. And that's Anthony A. Perez. Perez. He has about 445 subscribers. I'm one of them. He's been giving his support in some of the comments sections on my YouTube videos, specifically the movie reviews. He reviews movies himself. Very recently, he reviewed Child's Play and Child's Play 2. After, of course, the remake came out, which makes sense. He's reviewed District 9. I haven't seen his review yet, but he's reviewed Spider-Man Far From Home 3 days ago, probably when I saw it, so didn't have a chance to see his review before I watched it. Still haven't seen it. But I want to shout out his video, or his channel. He does some, I've seen some of his videos. He does great content. I'm going to put a link to his channel down in the description box below. And that's how, you can check out his channel and see for yourself if it's something you like or not. So until next time, guys, be well, stay safe, have a good day. If you want to, make sure to like, comment, and or subscribe. Until next time, guys, check out Anthony A. Perez's channel. Shout out to you. Until next time, guys, have a good day and peace.